my best. Okay, we will start with some verbal reasoning. And again, these come in sets of four for the same one question. So I'll give you a couple of minutes per thing, and then we'll go through the answers. So start my timer. Off you go. The passage text is the same, so I'll change it at 1 minute so you get the other two questions because it's about 30 seconds per question. Okay, if you want to start to pop any answers in the chat, and then I will open the answers on the next slide. I'm seeing a couple. You don't have to put them in the chat if you don't. It's absolutely fine. Okay, so the answer to the first one is can't tell. So we can tell that at least one person was prosecuted because the captain, oh, I'm going to butcher this name, Shatino, was found guilty, but it doesn't tell us that only he was found guilty. And then if we look at the next question, we can see that the ship was involved in an incident involving about 300 people because the captain left about 300 people on board the sinking vessel. It doesn't say that it was investigated for mechanical failures. This was the captain, not the builder, and we don't know that it was necessarily recovered. It says that there were recovery operations, but that might have been like recovery of people, not necessarily recovery of the vessel. Done the wrong way around, but there you go. Next question. We'll work out which order these are in now. On to the next set. Okay. I think I'd put the answers to the first one. It's over here. Oh, no, I didn't. Did I not do the second set of questions? Oh, I do apologize. Why did nobody tell me this? Okay. Anyway, going back to the last two answers of the first question. The passage tells us absolutely nothing about the number of passengers on the Titanic. So we can't tell. So I would be impressed if that was specific knowledge you had. And the ship's captain was criticised because he left the ship because of before all of his passengers had been rescued. And I guess you can kind of tell that from the tone of the passage where it says that he left the ship prematurely. Um, yeah, okay. I was so confused. Why did no one say anything? Anyway, um, here we go. If we begin with these, it says that Ebola was this current epidemic was first reported in this province of the Democratic Republic of Congo, but we don't know whether it began there. So that's can't tell. I can see most of you getting these right in the chat, which is wonderful. This epidemic is particularly challenging because of a lack of tests and treatment for this particular strain. Again, the passage kind of tells us that quite clearly. The disease has spread to at least one other country. We can tell that that's true. Um, it tells us that it's passed to Uganda's capital city as well, and Uganda's a different country to the Democratic Republic of Congo. And the passage suggesting about numbers, so you could work out the current mortality rate, but it's more than 10% from the numbers in here. It says that they're kind of not really confirmed reports, and it does say that these are likely to actually be far higher. So that is in fact C. I think we may be on to quantitative reasoning now. Okay. I think these are about a minute per question, so I'll give you a minute per question. There's 4 sets of questions per each, like data source. So off we go. Okay, next question. Next question. And on to the last one. I think you're either given a pen and paper or a whiteboard usually, but I think it might be test center specific. I can Google it. You can't bring your own, but apparently they will give you some, I think. But you can always check with your individual test center if you're concerned. But I wouldn't expect you to be able to do any of these without writing them down. Okay, on to the answers. So the first question. In 2020, John travelled on the Piccadilly line from South Kensington to Knightsbridge, then on to Hyde Park Corner, then on to Green Park. How much longer would this journey have taken him in the year 2000? So we need to calculate the time in 2020, which is here. So he goes South Kensington, Knightsbridge, Hyde Park Corner, Green Park. So he's essentially doing this whole journey. So in 2020, we can see that it's 3 minutes plus 2 minutes plus 4 minutes, which is 9 minutes. In 2000, it's 5 plus 10, no, 5 plus 8 plus 10, which is 23. So the difference is 14 minutes, which is this question, which is answer option C. Please just pop in the chat if you have any problems with any of the questions, and I'm happy to answer any. The next one, I guess if nobody has any questions. In 2020, what is the average speed of the Northern Line? So if we look at the Northern Line, we look at the total distance of the Northern Line, which is 3 plus 5 plus 6, which is 14. And then the total time in 2020 to travel that distance would be 11 minutes. So we can see that the total speed is going to be 14 divided by 11, which is 1.7 miles per minute, which you need to convert into hours. That's a catch out that might get, I don't know, a lot of people, perhaps more likely in your like A-level maths exams than the UCAT, but definitely be aware of that. Next question. What is the difference in the speed of the train between Oxford Circus and Green Park in 2020 and 2000? So if we start by, so distance remains constant at 3 miles. The time in 2000 was 10 minutes. So this total speed in 2000 would be 18 miles per hour. The time in 2020 only takes 5 minutes. That means it's 36 miles per hour. So the difference is 18 miles per hour, and then you can convert that into 11.25 kilometers per hour. And I don't know how many of you recall from my session, it'd be 2 weeks ago now, but this is when I was talking about minimizing your number of calculations. So you could have converted everything, you know, as soon as you saw kilometers in the answers, you could have converted everything into kilometers, but that would have given you a lot more overall calculations to do rather than keeping it in miles throughout and then converting it to kilometers at the end. Neva's asked, what do we need to know how to convert from miles to kilometers and pounds to kg? I probably would be aware of it. I would hope they would give it to you in the question, but I'm not 100% sure. I think there's relatively few of them to memorize that I perhaps just would in case they don't. But I actually don't know whether they do. Okay. Moving onwards. Last one. In 2000, the tube charges per distance at 40 miles, 40p per mile travelled. In 2020, this changed to charging by time at 50p per minute. How much cheaper is travelling the whole of the Northern Line in 2020 than 2000? So the total distance is 40 miles. So in the year 2000, this would have cost you £5.60. But in 2020, they do it by time. It takes 11 minutes, which would cost £5.50. So the difference is 10 pence. Okay. Any questions about any of those? Perfect. Okay. On to the next one, then. Okay, next question. Okay, next question. And on to the last one. Okay, we'll go through the answers now. So to build the fence, the farmer needs to cover obviously the total perimeter of the field. So this would be 10 plus 20 plus 10 plus 20. I think that's a place that lots of people get caught out because I guess sometimes you forget that you use all four sides, but that means the total perimeter is 60 meters, and we're told that it's 25 meters. No, £25 per meter. My brain's actually not working. It's the heat. Per meter. So 25 times 60 is 1,500. You're then told that he needs specific corner posts. So don't forget those. And so that would be 4 times 100, which is, my brain's so not working. 400. 400 plus 1,500 is 1,900, which means answer D. Okay, moving onwards. Any problems with that, then people do let me know. How much profit does the farmer make if he plants the fields with carrots and half the field with lettuce? So we know that half of the area is 100 meters squared because we know that 10 times 20 is 200. So half that's going to be 100. And the crops cost and sale price are per 100 meter per square meter. So the cost to plant carrots is going to be £1,000 because it's 100 times 10, but we're able to sell it for £1,600. So we're going to make £600 profit. On the lettuce, the cost to plant is £1,500, but we're going to make £2,100. So we're going to get £600 profit. So the overall profit is going to be 1,200. I hope that's clear. Okay, to make the largest possible profit, what crop should the farmer plant? So I found it helpful to make a little table here and to work out sort of the profit per square meter, because again, I'm all about limited calculations. So while I could have worked out the costs and the sale prices for the whole area, I thought it was easier to do it per individual meter, and then obviously that would multiply up. So I just literally subtracted the difference between each, and it turns out that turnips are the best crop to. I apologize if I don't know if I'm explaining things too well or not enough, but just let me know if there's any problems. How much does it cost the farmers plant the entire field with wheats, carrots, lettuce, squash, and turnips in equal proportions? So we have 200 meters over 200 square meters overall. Divide by 5 is 40. And then we need to know the total price for one. So I did it working out the total price for 1 meter of each to total 5 meters, if that makes sense, because I broke it down into 5 meter chunks. So is that clear? I don't know if that's clear, but basically I was essentially thinking that you plant things in groups of 5, where 1 meter is each thing, if that makes sense. So 1 meter of wheat, 1 meter of carrots, 1 meter of lettuce, 1 meter of squash, 1 meter of turnips. So adding the cost price of all of those together gives you 72, and then you need 40 sort of chunks of 5. So therefore your total cost would be 2,880. What do you mean by 5 meters? I am just multiplying by 40. You just have to add them all together to work out that there is 40. You have to know that they're in 5 meters to work out that you need to multiply by 40. Someone's asked if I can go back to question 3. So I'll leave it on that. So Neva, what I'm trying to say is that I guess because I'm planting 1 meter squared of each crop, I've made a 5 meter sort of block overall because there's 5 different plants, and then I need 40 of those blocks, if that makes sense. I hope that's clear. Let me know if not. Okay, we will move on. Next question. Okay, next question. Oh, lost 2. Next question. Last one. Okay, on to the answers. Which of the settlements has the lowest population density? Population density is just population divided by area. So again, I'm a big fan of a table. So yeah, from doing this, we can see that Grantchester, in fact, has the lowest population density. 10% of the population of Cambridge moved to Peterborough. What is the new difference between the two populations? So 10% of 150,000 is 15,000. So the new population of Cambridge is 135,000. But if they move to Peterborough, then the new population of Peterborough is going to be 215,000. So the difference is now 80,000. Of the population of Huntingdon, 50,000 are elderly. There are half as many children as there are elderly people, and the remainder are working age adults. Of the whole population, exactly 50% are female, 50% are male. What proportion of the overall population of Huntingdon are working age males? So if we know that 50,000 are elderly, then we know that 25,000 are children. The total elderly and children are therefore 75,000, which means that only my brain is completely dead in this heat. Only 25,000 are working age adults. 50% of these are male, so 12,500 are male, and of a total proportion, this is 12.5%. Okay, I will go back to some questions after this. There are several cities, towns within the county of Cambridgeshire. Why am I reading the title? In 2023, a new city is built. In all the original cities with a population greater than or equal to 100,000, 15% of people moved to this new city. In all other cities, 10% of people moved to this new city. What's the population of the new city? So again, handy dandy table, just work it out for each one, and then just add them together, and the total is 76,500. I think people didn't get that one, but it's just quite a lot of maths to do and then to add up together at the end. Okay, so I've run out of math questions. I'm happy to go back to any that I'm getting requests for now. So someone wants to go back to the question about 5 meters. Where's it gone? This one. I think you might be overthinking the 5 meters issue. I think what I'm trying to explain is that the total field is 200 meters squared. We are planting things in equal proportions. So I just made it into blocks of 5 meters with 1 meter of each different crop. and then there's 40 meters of those blocks of 5. I hope that answers your question. If not, then I guess send me another message and I can probably explain at the end. Someone wants to know question 2. This one is question 2. The answer was 80,000. Okay. Everyone happy? We can move on to some decision making if everyone is happy. Okay, cool. Off we go. I'll give you about a minute for each one. Okay. So there are 6 runners in a race. Abe comes second last. I made handy dandy animations here. Abe comes second last. Oh, they're not going to work. There you go. Abe comes second last. With Keris just in front. Dominic was faster than Keris. So he's one of these 3, but Fred was faster than Dominic. We'll ignore that for now. Eric came in after Abe. So we then sort of know that these bottom 3 are fixed. So we, however, know that of the top 3, Bob finished between Fred and Dominic. So I'm going to put him in second, and then we know that Fred was faster than Dominic. So that is the final order. So Bob finished second. Hope that makes sense. Perfect. Everyone's getting it right. That's what I like to see. On to the next one. Okay. On to the answers. So we know that there are 60 children overall. There are twice as many short children as tall children. So we let S equal 2t. And then we can sort of solve this for 20 tall children and 40 short children. We know that there are 10 more blonde children than tall children. So there are 30 blonde children. 50% of the blonde children are tall. It means that there are 15 tall, blonde-haired tall children. That's part of my explanation. No, I haven't. There we go. This means that 5 tall children have red hair, because we know there are 20 overall. So if we know that there are 20 blonde, we know that there are 30 blonde, 30 red overall. Then 30 minus 5 for the 5 tall children have red hair equals 25. So this leaves us with the 25 short children having red hair. Did I change? Oh, I changed from brown to red. That's where it came from. I apologize. It's because blonde and brown had the same starting letter. I tried to change it. I do apologize. Okay, on to the next question. And I can see people getting this right, which is wonderful. It's a couple more seconds left. Okay. Yeah, the answer is 20. Just needed to find the ones that were in the oval, but not in the heart. Okay, question 4. Okay. So 50 times 6 gives you 300 for the total bill. That's a really good trick for averages that I would recommend for everything. John pays 20%, so that's 60 overall. Yeah. And then Eric pays £15 less, so that's 45. Steve, Fred, and Bill pay an average of 30, so that gives 90 total between them. But we know that Fred doesn't pay anything, so Steve plus Bill is 90. But then Steve pays £10 more than Bill, so we can work that out as Bill pays 40 and Steve pays 50. We then basically add up all the ones that we do know, including Fred's 0, and then we get 195. So 300 minus 195 is 105. So Albert pays 105. Yeah. It changes between them, does it not? No, it was 6. This is what happens when you make questions in the heat. I do apologize. Okay. Moving on. I want to go back to question 2. I think that's the answer to question 2. I'm fairly sure the recording of this is available. Priya, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it will get sent
Yeah.
out.
So I guess you can go back to those questions later if you want to, or message me with any questions. So we are basically at quarter 2. So if Priya is in agreement, I'm happy to stop for any questions that people have now, and then we can do whatever situational judgment we have time to do. But I just thought I'd give people an opportunity to ask any general questions that they might have about UCAT prep, A-level prep, interview prep, I guess anything, if Priya's in agreement with that.
Yeah. Go ahead. No problem.
Um, yeah. So I'll just give it a couple of minutes for people to. Can you explain Five Brothers? It wasn't supposed to be Five Brothers. It was Six Brothers. But that's what happens when you try and write questions in 30-degree heat. I do apologize. Any other questions about anything? Maybe no one has any questions. This would be new. I realized I didn't really introduce myself, but I'm hoping you remember me from 2 weeks ago. Best way to practice for UCAT is practice questions over and over and over and over and over again. I did it starting with them. I think I started with them untimed and then did them timed. But when I started doing them timed, I did them in much smaller blocks. So I would do like 10 questions for a start. Like I would do them in blocks of like 5 questions, 10 questions, whatever like I could sort of tolerate. Because I wanted to work out where I was making mistakes. And then I moved on to doing like mocks of whole sections, so like a whole verbal reasoning section. And then I moved on to doing whole mocks overall. Is it best you do unit conversions at the end of working out quantitative reasoning? I always tend to do it at the end because it tends to limit the number of conversions that you have to do. I think I used Medify. It was like 7 years ago now, because I'm about to graduate. How long did you do practice question for untimed and then timed? I can't really remember. I think once I was starting to get a grasp on doing them untimed, I moved on to doing them timed because I think the difficulty with most questions is the time limit rather than the difficulty of the question. So I would recommend moving on to timed questions perhaps earlier than you would think. But if you're doing like timed blocks of questions and getting 0, then you're not really gaining much from that. So there's probably a bit of a balance in there. Any other questions for any more? Is a week enough to move on to timed? I have no idea. Depends how you're doing on the untimed questions, depends how long you've got left. I think you probably need more than a week of timed questions if that's what you're asking. I definitely think you probably need more than a week of practicing timed questions. But obviously I don't know when your exams are. How much should you practice in a day approximately? Depends when you started, depends when your exam is, depends what scores you're getting. I think when I did it, I treated it like a school day and was sort of doing sort of the 9 to 5 vibe. But it's very dependent on the scores you're getting in the mocks you do and the scores you're aiming for, because if you are aiming for a score higher than you're getting in the mocks, you might have to put some more hours in. It's very dependent on you, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Any other questions? If not, we can do 10 minutes of some situational judgment. We'll give it one more minute for anyone to ask anything. We have exhausted questions. Okay. Right, situational judgment. I'll answer any other questions that come on as we do it. I will give you, I forget how long you get for these ones. I'll give you a couple of minutes. I don't think the issue with situational judgment is usually the time. Someone asked what my usual day looked like revising. It really depends what I was doing, because I would always do a block of questions and then analyze what I'd done. So I would just kind of repeat that for how much I could fit into the day. How do you analyze? You just go through the questions you got wrong and worked out why you got them wrong. Was it something like a technique issue, a timing issue? You didn't understand the question, silly mistake. Work out what you did wrong so it doesn't happen again. I am at Cambridge University. I'm just about to finish in 3 weeks, I think. But please use my revision strategies as a guide. What you do is very dependent on you and how you work best. And doing the same amount of revision as somebody or revising the same way as somebody doesn't necessarily guarantee the same outcomes. You need to work out what works best for you. Okay, answers. How Jeremy is a junior doctor working on a ward. He finds the work has been signed each day easy and is able to complete all his assigned tasks with time to spare within his shift. This sounds wonderful. I hope this is me next year. This means that he is bored and has a lot of spare time. How appropriate are the following responses by Jeremy? Ask a consultant on the ward if you'll be allowed to offer help to other junior doctors working on other wards once he has finished his own work. This is very appropriate. He's improving the care of patients without compromising the care of his own patients and will expand his own learning experience. So I would say this is a very appropriate thing to do, and people are agreeing with me, which is wonderful. Next question. Ask the race manager if he can be swapped onto a busier ward, which might offer him more training opportunities. I would say it's inappropriate but not awful. Helping on other wards is appropriate, but asking to be swapped away from your current ward might be considered selfish. From the perspective of Jeremy, it might be good, but the patients on his own ward do still require care. Asking consultant on the ward if he can get involved with some of the other activities, such as audits, research, and teaching. This is very appropriate as it shows proactivity, active engagement in all aspects of ward life. He's finished his clinical tasks, so this doesn't impact on patient care, but benefits the whole ward team. Okay, on to the last one. Use spare time to prepare resources for medical students. This might seem a good idea, but it's kind of unrelated to the ward. More of a hobby, should be done outside contracted hours. This doesn't directly benefit his team and is therefore not appropriate. However, as he'd be using spare time, this doesn't directly impact the care of the patients on his ward. So this is appropriate, but not helpful. Okay, next set. Okay, on to the answers. I won't bother reading the heading. I think people can read for themselves. The fact that Margaret does not usually make mistakes is not important at all. Doesn't excuse the current state. See everyone getting that right, which I like. Change slides. The patient was not harmed as the mistake was not corrected. This is not important at all. Like the fact that the mistake was corrected before harm occurred, but it doesn't mean the mistake isn't a mistake. So, It's important regardless. The nurse who was on the ward that day was very experienced and probably would have checked the patient's information and not administered the dose anyway. This is again not important at all. Patient safety comes first. The patient was not aware that penicillin was ever prescribed and thus they were ever in danger. Again, a mistake is still a mistake, and this is a kind of a potential issue for the future. So not important at all. Okay, that is the end of all my questions. Still got 5 minutes left, so if anyone wants to ask any questions about anything, please do feel free.